In May of 2003, the state of Utah in the United States was the setting for one of the most astonishing survival stories ever recorded. A young climber named Aron Ralston, then 27 years old, decided to take on a solitary trail through the colorful mountains of the American Southwest. It was just another typical adventure in his life of exploration. Utah is famous for its breathtaking landscapes and unique rock formations, but behind that natural beauty lie unpredictable dangers. Aron chose to explore a remote area called Blue John Canyon, near the town of Moab, where few people usually pass through. Moab, located in Grand County, is known as a gateway to national parks such as Arches and Canyonlands. It's a place where many adventurers prepare for extreme challenges. However, Aron had no idea this would be his greatest test of life. He set off alone, without informing anyone of his exact destination. He carried only a backpack with basic gear, water, and enough food for a few days. He thought it would be a quick and peaceful hike. Aron had experience with climbing and had done numerous trails across the country. His background as a mechanical engineer and technical skills gave him confidence when facing natural obstacles. However, no amount of physical or mental preparation could anticipate what was about to happen. Blue John Canyon is a narrow, winding ravine with vertical walls and deep crevices. During his descent, Aron needed to jump from one rock to another. It was in this seemingly simple moment that everything changed. As he jumped from a larger rock, he slipped and fell into a tight crevice. His right arm became trapped between a heavy boulder and the wall of the crack. The pain was immediate, and the silence of the canyon became eerily absolute. Aron tried to push the rock with all his strength, but it didn't move an inch. He was alone, without cell signal, far from any road or civilization. Here began a battle against time and fear. It was around 10 a.m. when the accident occurred. He used the resources in his backpack to stay hydrated and calm. With limited water and little food, Aron knew he needed to keep his mind focused to have any chance of survival. During the first hours, he recorded videos with his digital camera, documenting his situation. He wanted to leave a message in case he didn't survive. These recordings later became part of the most shocking and human testimony of survival history. The temperature dropped rapidly at night, and the cold began to affect his body. He improvised shelters with what he had and tried to conserve energy. Each movement was a struggle, each thought a strategic decision. His friends and family would only notice his absence days later. Since he hadn't informed them of his exact route, the rescue effort would take time to begin. Aron understood this and knew he would have to rely solely on himself. During this time, he revisited memories of his life, his mistakes, and his achievements. The extreme solitude forced him to confront feelings he normally ignored. His mind, once focused only on adventure, now sought meaning and purpose. As time passed, Aron studied ways to free himself. He tried lifting the boulder with ropes, using improvised tools, until the only possible option emerged: amputate his own arm. Then began the hardest journey of all. Not only physical, but psychological. On Thursday of the following week after the accident, he gathered courage and performed the most desperate act of his life. Aron Ralston woke up on the second day still trapped beneath that giant rock. His right arm completely immobilized, his muscles sore, and his mind exhausted. But he knew giving up was not an option. He started improvising solutions to try to free himself. He used his multi-tool knife to wedge small rocks under the boulder trapping him, hoping to relieve some pressure. But it was unsuccessful. The force required was far beyond what he could generate alone. Unable to move, Aron was exposed to the cold nights and scorching sun during the day. His body began showing signs of exhaustion. Every movement was difficult. Every breath, a fight against hopelessness. However, he kept his head clear. He knew that if he wanted any chance of getting out alive, he needed to organize his actions. He began mentally noting everything he did, as if writing a survival manual. Water was his most valuable resource. He rationed it carefully, taking small sips at regular intervals. Without it, his body would fail before he even found a solution to escape. Food was also scarce. He had a few energy bars and a small portion of snacks. He ate a little at a time, forcing himself to chew slowly, almost tricking his brain into suppressing hunger. During this time, Aron used his digital camera to record personal videos. In a calm and rational tone, he left messages for his family and friends. It was as if, somehow, this kept him connected to the outside world. Even if I don't make it out of here, at least they'll know where I am, he thought while filming. These recordings showed his clarity, even amid despair. They were marked by courage and determination. Besides the recordings, he also made notes in his climbing journal, using the blank pages to record important details, such as the time, his actions, and even reflections on his own life. As the days passed, Aron began to realize his physical condition was worsening. His skin was pale, his eyes sunken, and his energy drained. But there was something inside him that insisted on resisting. He began thinking about everyone he loved. His mother, his father, his friends. The adventures he'd lived, the promises he made to himself. Perhaps this was his last chance to prove who he truly was. Solitude is a silent enemy. It arrives slowly, but with enough force to erode even the strongest psychologically. Aron felt this. There were moments when the voice in his mind said, "Maybe it's time to stop," but he didn't accept defeat. Each negative thought was replaced by an alternative plan. Each moment of discouragement was followed by a new attempt to free himself. His mind was his greatest weapon at that moment. On the third day, he decided to try something different. Use a rope to create a kind of lever with the rock. By tying it to strategic points and pulling with his legs, perhaps he could lift the stone. It was a failed attempt, but symbolic. By nightfall on the fourth day, Aron had already lost any clear concept of time. Everything seemed eternal and infinite. Yet, he kept repeating to himself, "You will get out of here. You will win." On the fifth day, trapped in the crevice, Aron no longer had any doubts. No help would arrive in time. He had calculated that his water reserves were at their limit. If no one knew his whereabouts, he wouldn't last much longer. His body was weak. His muscles were beginning to atrophy from lack of movement. His hands trembled constantly, a result of dehydration and extreme physical exhaustion. Each second felt like an eternity. That was when he began seriously considering an alternative that previously seemed unthinkable: amputating his own arm. It was something he never imagined having the courage to do, but now it seemed to be the only way out. The idea didn't come suddenly. It gradually took shape in his mind. He remembered stories of extreme survival, of people who had made radical decisions to live. And maybe this was his hour. He spent hours analyzing the situation. How to do it? With which tools? How long would it take? Would he be able to control the pain? Each question was a separate mental battle. He had a small multi-tool knife, the kind used for climbing. It wasn't surgical nor strong enough to cut bone. But it was all he had. He decided to study how he could use it to free himself. With the little movement he had, he tried to reach the exact point where his arm was trapped. He moved slowly, carefully, feeling every detail of the pressure of the rock against his flesh. He needed to understand exactly where to cut. The fear was immense. Fear of unbearable pain, fear of bleeding too much, fear of losing consciousness before finishing what he had started. But above all, he feared dying there, alone, leaving no trace. That was when he realized that to survive, he would need to go beyond physical pain. He would need to dominate his instincts of fear and weakness. That would be a true war against himself. He returned to recording videos. This time, he spoke directly to his family. He told them what he planned to do and asked for forgiveness for anything he might have done wrong. It was as if he were saying goodbye, but also preparing to fight. His words were calm, firm. Despite the gravity of the situation, Aron maintained clarity. He knew that if he hesitated, he might lose the chance to act. He had to be fast, precise, and determined. That night, as he looked at the sky between the canyon walls, he made a promise. If he managed to get out of there, he would change his life. He would spend more time with the people he loved and value every minute as if it were his last. The next morning, he knew the moment had arrived. The sun entered faintly into the crevice, illuminating the most difficult scene he would face. He took a deep breath, grabbed his knife, and prepared for what was coming. It was impossible to predict how he would react once he started, whether he would scream, cry, or pass out. But one thing was certain. If he didn't do this, he wouldn't leave that place alive. And he wanted to live, very much. So, with his left hand, he held the knife and placed it against his right arm. He was about to begin the most heroic and desperate act of his life. Aron took a deep breath. With the knife in his left hand, he positioned it carefully against the tissue of his right arm. He knew he couldn't hesitate. An uncertain movement could mean failure or passing out before finishing. He began cutting the skin. The pain was unbearable, but he maintained control. Each stroke of that small blade felt like an explosion within him. Still, he didn't stop. He needed to continue. Blood slowly dripped, staining his clothes and the surrounding rocks. Aron knew he would need to control the bleeding as soon as he was free. That's why he had already prepared a strip of cloth to apply pressure to the wound. After the skin came the muscle. It was thicker, more resistant. Each cut required physical and mental strength. He used the weight of his body to help press the knife, despite the shaking in his hands caused by pain and fear. He thought about everything he wanted to live for his parents, for his friends, for all the trails he still planned to explore. Those memories kept him conscious, focused, determined not to give up. He reached the bone. Here, the knife blade wouldn't be enough. Then he used the strength of his hands to break the humerus, the largest bone in the arm. The sound of the bone cracking echoed inside the crevice like a silent scream of pain. Even with the broken bone, there were still tendons and nerves connecting the arm to the rock. Each one needed to be carefully cut. If he made the wrong movement, he could injure something vital and die right there. While working, he cried. Not from weakness, but from relief. Each cut was a step toward freedom. Each drop of blood spilled was the price to pay for his life. Finally, after minutes that felt like hours, the arm came loose. Aron screamed, but it was a scream of victory, not defeat. He was free. Free from the rock, free from the crevice, free from imminent death. Immediately, he applied pressure to the stump with the improvised cloth. He had to stop the bleeding. If he lost too much blood now, all the sacrifice would have been in vain. He breathed quickly, trying to remain calm. With only one arm, Aron had to climb vertical walls and descend from high places. He used his backpack as support and improvised descending techniques with ropes and anchor points. Each movement was a battle against pain. He walked for kilometers, dragging himself when he no longer had strength. With every step, he felt the hot ground beneath his feet, the strong sun beating down on his face, but nothing mattered. He was alive, and he would leave that canyon. Then, around 3:30 p.m. on Thursday, 5 days after the accident, Aron spotted a group of tourists atop an elevation. He shouted with all the strength he had. Someone would finally see him. The tourists quickly descended to him. Upon seeing his condition, they were shocked but acted swiftly. A rescue helicopter was summoned and arrived a few hours later. Aron was rushed to the hospital in Moab, where he received immediate medical attention. His story of survival was no longer just his own. It would soon spread worldwide as an example of extreme courage and human determination. When Aron was lifted onto the rescue helicopter, still covered in blood and with his amputated arm, he knew he had won the hardest battle of his life. But there was still a lot ahead to recover. The flight to the hospital in Moab was quick but intense. The medical team worked non-stop to stabilize his condition. He was dehydrated, in shock, and had significant blood loss. Every minute counted. Upon arrival at the hospital center, Aron was immediately taken to the emergency room. Doctors and nurses acted with precision, administering 4 fluids, medications, and preparing him for a more detailed surgery on the arm stump. Aron had lost approximately 25% of his total blood volume. Nevertheless, he remained conscious for almost the entire trip. It was only after receiving sedatives that he finally let fatigue take over and fell asleep. His parents were immediately informed. When they learned he was alive, they cried with emotion and relief. They knew their son had an adventurous spirit, but they never imagined he would face something so extreme. In the following days, Aron remained hospitalized under constant observation. His body began to respond positively to medical care. The risk of infection was real, but he seemed lucky to be alive. Meanwhile, news of the incident began circulating in the local press. A man who amputated his own arm to survive? It was incredible, surreal. Quickly, local newspapers and TV channels began spreading the story. The recordings Aron made during the days trapped in the crevice became proof not only of his lucidity but also of his courage. In one of them, he spoke directly into the camera, asking for help if someone found his body. These videos moved thousands of people. They showed a human being facing the worst possible scenario with dignity, clarity, and impressive mental strength. The media began calling him a modern hero. Aron also surprised the doctors. Despite everything, he showed no signs of serious infection or permanent neurological damage. His physical health was good, and his mind, despite the trauma, seemed resilient. During his recovery in the hospital, he received calls, letters, and support messages from people around the world. Many said his story would change their lives. He decided to publicly share his experience. He gave press conferences, participated in TV programs, and wrote personal articles. His message was clear: no matter what happens, you have a choice, and the choice is to live. Soon after, his story reached Hollywood producers. Director Danny Boyle, known for films like Slumdog Millionaire, read Aron's account and decided to turn his journey into a movie. The title chosen for the film would be 127 Hours, referring exactly to the time Aron was trapped in the crevice before escaping. Actor James Franco was cast to play him, and filming would begin years later. But before that, Aron needed to face a new phase, adapting to life with only one arm. This would be a new physical and emotional challenge, and he was already preparing to overcome it. Aron left the hospital weeks after the rescue, physically stronger but emotionally shaken. He had survived the unthinkable, but now he needed to learn how to live with a completely new reality. Life with only one arm. The first few weeks at home were difficult. He found himself dependent on others for simple tasks he used to do without thinking. Tying his shoes, holding objects, even taking a glass of water was a challenge with just one hand. However, Aron did not let himself be defeated. Each small achievement counted as a victory. A step, a movement, a completed task. All of these were reasons to move forward and rebuild his identity. He began a physical rehabilitation process under the supervision of therapists specialized in amputations. The main goal was to regain body strength and learn new ways to balance daily activities. At the same time, he also sought psychological help. He understood that the mind needed healing as much as the body. Therapy sessions helped him process the trauma, understand his new role in the world, and find purpose in what he had lived. In moments of reflection, Aron realized that nothing would ever be the same again, and perhaps that was the best part. He had learned to value every second, every breath, every opportunity to exist. He decided to write a book about his experience. Titled Between a Rock and a Hard Place, the personal account would bring never-before-told details of the time he spent trapped in the crevice and how that journey radically changed his vision of life. The book was released in 2004, just months after the accident. It quickly became an international bestseller. People from all over the world identified not only with the survival story, but with the transformative power of faith and human determination. While writing, Aron began planning his return to the mountains. Many thought he was crazy, but he knew nature was not the enemy. It was his passion, his inspiration, and an essential part of who he was. To test his own limits, he resumed light physical activities. He started with short walks, then progressed to cycling and swimming. Every time he moved, he felt more alive, more connected to himself. Over time, he trained specific techniques to practice climbing with one hand. He adapted equipment, studied alternative ways to use ropes and carabiners. His adventurous spirit remained intact. Aron began sharing this process on social media and in lectures. He showed how people could overcome any barrier when they had focus, support, and the willingness to restart. Many athletes with disabilities reached out to him, saying his story inspired them to try things they once considered impossible. Aron was surprised by the impact he had beyond the borders of extreme sports. He started advocating for environmental and humanitarian causes. He used his name and story to raise awareness about the importance of preserving natural parks and individual responsibility in outdoor adventures. Then he decided to return exactly to the place where he almost died. Not to relive the trauma, but to close a cycle. And it was there, in front of the very rocks that trapped him, that he found true inner peace. Months after the accident, Aron decided to return to the place that almost killed him, Blue John Canyon in Utah. For many, it seemed like a dangerous or unnecessary step. For him, it was a way to heal. He didn't want to remember only the suffering, but also the moment he discovered strengths he didn't know he had. He wanted to revisit the rocks, feel the wind between the canyon walls, and find peace with his past. Aron traveled accompanied by friends and family. This time, he wasn't alone. He brought proper safety gear, suitable clothing, and most importantly, a mind prepared to face any challenge. Upon arriving at the crevice where he had been trapped for 5 days, he stopped and took a deep breath. The landscape was exactly the same, silent, imposing, almost sacred. That was where everything had changed. He approached the rock that had trapped him and touched it with his single hand. There was no anger, no fear, only respect. That stone was part of his story, but it wouldn't define who he was. Aron sat near the location and closed his eyes. He began remembering the hardest moments, the recordings he had made, the words he had said to his loved ones. And for the first time, he cried without pain, only gratitude. There, in that remote canyon, he understood something deep. Life is precious because it is fragile. And every second is a gift, especially when you survive a moment that could have been your last. He took some photos, recorded a short video, and wrote a few lines in his personal journal. He wanted to record this moment not as trauma, but as rebirth. On that trip, Aron also explored other trails in the region. He climbed new mountains, crossed rivers, and observed the horizon with the eyes of someone who had already faced death and chose to live. It was on this return that he realized how the accident had transformed him. He now always warned someone before leaving, carried extra equipment, and studied the terrain carefully before any adventure. This new attitude did not make him less adventurous. On the contrary, it made him appreciate extreme experiences even more, but with responsibility. Now he understood that real courage lies in being prepared. Back in civilization, Aron began to openly share his reflections on the accident. In lectures and interviews, he spoke about overcoming difficult choices and the importance of letting the past serve as learning, not as imprisonment. He also used this experience to inspire young athletes, people with disabilities, and even mental health professionals. His testimony showed that even in the most extreme circumstances, the human being can resist and evolve. Aron became a public figure not only because of his survival story, but because of his message of resilience and hope. Many said he was not just a survivor, he was an example of human strength. And so, the man who nearly died trapped between rocks emerged as someone who would teach the world that life does not end with an accident. It continues, stronger than ever. After the movie 127 Hours was released, Aron saw his influence grow exponentially. People who previously didn't know his story began searching for his book, following his projects, and engaging with his philosophy. But above all, Aron saw the film as something bigger than himself. It was a way to inspire others to face their own internal canyons, and that, for him, was the greatest legacy possible. Years later, Aron Ralston saw his story reach a global audience. People from Japan, Australia, Europe, and Latin America watched his story unfold and were moved. Many reported having found the strength to change their lives after hearing him speak. His speeches evolved over time. Now he talked not only about survival, but about choices, purpose, fatherhood, and the importance of living with gratitude. Every difficult experience, according to him, could teach something valuable. Aron also became an advocate for the balance between technology and nature. In his lectures, he warned about the excess of virtual connection and encouraged people to seek real moments, away from screens. Many of the young people who watched the movie or read his book said their lives had changed because of it. Some decided to pursue careers in extreme sports, others sought therapy, and many simply learned to value each day. For Aron, this was the greatest gift of all. Knowing that his pain served to generate hope, that his extreme decision was transformed into motivation for those facing their own internal canyons. He often says, "We don't need to go through something as extreme as I did to remember that we are alive. Just wake up every day and choose to fight for something that matters." Over the years, Aron has been invited to participate in TV shows, documentaries, and even survival series. But he prefers to focus on simple things: family, nature, and community. His story serves as a reminder that life is unpredictable but full of possibilities. Even when everything seems lost, there is always a chance. You just have to have the courage to grab it. Aron Ralston proved that, even trapped between rocks and against all odds, it is possible to find strength to move forward. And that strength lies within each of us. We just need to want to use it. If the story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss inspiring content like this. After all, sometimes it's just a small dose of courage we need to change our own story.